So how many of you have ever clenched a basketball-playing donkey in the name of human connection? Not a single person in here. I mean, I know it sounds like an insane question to ask, but back in 2009, that was my master plan for how to cultivate new connection in my life. See, I just moved from Chicago, Illinois, where I was born and raised, to Elko, Nevada, a tiny town in the northwest part of the state. I moved for a great job opportunity. Like many of you who's ever moved for school or work or adventure, I got to a place barren of connection. I was hundreds of miles away from anybody who even knew my name. So when one of my new coworkers asked if I wanted to participate in an activity called donkey basketball, I leaped at the chance. I figured it'd be a great new way to make some new connections. And since none of you have ever played donkey basketball before, it is exactly like it sounds. Players mount donkeys inside a gymnasium and ride them around saddleless, holding on to a rope with one hand. Easy enough, right? No, not for a city guy like myself who had never been on a horse, let alone a donkey before. I was terrified. And it's why I spent the entire game strapped tight to my donkey like a human backpack. As you can see from this official reenactment photo, this was not a good look for me. And it's likely why by the end of the activity, after putting myself out there, just hoping to make a few new friends, the only connection I had established was with my donkey. I spent 2.5 years living in Elko, and I went through extreme measures to try to cultivate connection. Most people think connection happens in the presence of others. It doesn't. I fell into this social trap thinking in order to feel connected, I needed to be around people. But I was surrounded by people and I felt completely alone. Loneliness is not defined by the absence of people. It's defined by the absence of connection. The late, great Robin Williams summed this up perfectly when he heartbreakingly said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to die all alone. It isn't. The worst thing in life is to be surrounded by people who make you feel all alone." And that's exactly how I felt. Even with support from family and friends outside of Elko, the lack of daily connectedness was devastating. And as I reflected on this experience in my life, I've learned that in order to have been able to build better connections, I needed to become more connectable. Just like when someone is likable, they're easy to get along with. When someone's connectable, they're easy to connect with. And being connectable, just like being kind or thoughtful or empathetic, is a learnable life skill that serves our relationships well. A skill most of us are unaware of or spend a lot of time strengthening. So today, there's some really good news, because I'm here to teach you 3 very simple but very mighty secrets for how to become more connectable. Secrets that provide our connections with the necessary nutrients they need to both grow and thrive. As the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of the book Connectable, How Leaders Can Move Teams from Isolated to All In, I've spent the past decade helping the world's top companies build cultures of togetherness. I've helped thousands of people become more connectable, which is a very valuable skill these days, because loneliness has continued to rise over recent years. In fact, in the 1980s, some research out of Duke University found that when Americans were asked how many confidants they had in their life, the most common response was 3. 20 years later, in 2004, when Americans were asked the same question, the most common response was 0. And loneliness has been climbing since then. Our research of more than 2,000 people from around the world has found that 72% of people feel disconnected on a monthly basis, with 55% saying they feel disconnected every single week, which is a huge problem because feelings of exclusion show up in the same part of the brain as physical pain. This means that when you feel excluded, your body goes through a fight or flight response, releasing very dangerous and harmful stress hormones, hormones that plague our body with all kinds of illnesses. In fact, if loneliness had a warning label, it would look a lot like this. So since loneliness has been on the rise, and since human connection is so important to our health, our well-being, and our vitality as a species, the question becomes, how can we better cultivate it? How can we become more connectable? Well, It does not involve playing donkey basketball, so that's really good news, right? Just gonna put that out there. But it does involve 3 little-known secrets. Secrets that actually involve Oprah Winfrey and written letters and social workouts and students from Princeton University. I can tell you're a bit intrigued by what this has to do with becoming more connectable. So let's dive in. Let's talk about secret number 1, which is to perform pro-social behaviors. Simply put, pro-social behaviors are the behaviors that get displayed during communication that allow you to feel fully seen. Loneliness is being seen through. Belonging is being seen as. And this is very important to understand because there's a major misconception when it comes to connection. We think that communication is connection. It isn't. We're communicating all day long and we're the loneliest we've ever been. Communication is just the sharing of information between 2 people. It, in and of itself, is not connective at all. In fact, when 2 people are communicating, especially at work, when conversations tend to be tactical in nature, the frontal lobe is a part of the brain that registers that activity, the part of the brain that responds to data and information. The feeling of connectedness, that happens in the back part of our brain, in a totally separate region. Connection happens when 2 people get in sync. When someone feels really listened to and empathized with and understood. When there's a flow of energy that transfers from one person to the other. As my dear friend and business partner Ryan Jenkins says, communication is dealt, connection is felt. Connection pushes past communication. Professional interviewers like Joe Rogan and Oprah Winfrey and Adam Grant are masters at pushing past communication. They use very specific pro-social techniques to build really strong connections with their guest. Techniques that do not work via text, email, or DMs on social media. So here's what they do. The first thing, they listen to unlock. They're conversational miners who dig deep for understanding. They ask lots of questions and really explore their guest perspective before sharing their own. Second, they align. They use the words, stories, and examples as shared by their guest and weave them into their own thoughts, ideas, and perspectives, either agreeing or disagreeing with context. This allows their guests to feel understood. And third, they're all in. They're not distracted. They give their guests the undivided attention that they need in order to feel like the most important person in the room. These types of pro-social behaviors are what allow us to feel that powerful sense of connectedness when we communicate with others. So if you want to become more connectable, remember to perform pro-social behaviors. The second secret is to spotlight someone's significance. My colleague Ellis Rintz had a client with a disconnected employee named George. And George became short, distant, and disengaged. When asked what to do, Ellis told his client to go to George and let him know he's needed for an upcoming project. Ellis said, pick any project, but tell George explicitly why his skills are so important for the project's success. Client found a project for George, and George crushed the project. Ellis then helped his client write a letter that accentuated George's impact. The client handed the letter to George in passing. 20 minutes later, George walked into his office, closed the door, held up the letter, and said, this is the single nicest thing anyone has ever done for me. He not only kept that letter in his toolbox for many years, but he transformed his attitude, becoming a model employee. The letter spotlighted his significance. Dr. Stephen Cole, a researcher and a professor out of UCLA, told me in an interview that making somebody feel significant achieves one of the most fundamental needs we have as humans. You see, thousands of years ago, if we became a burden on the tribe, we were at risk of getting exiled, in which case our survival rate plummeted. And today, we're so hardwired to feel like we matter, like we're significant. And it's actually quite easy to make somebody feel this way, because there's a magic phrase that you can use. The phrase is, I need you. I need your advice because I really respect your opinion. I need your help because you're so good at X, Y, and Z. I need your support because I cannot do this without you. You could also make somebody feel significant by acknowledging their impact after a project, or sharing the skills they possess that they might not see in themselves, or providing a heartfelt thank you after they provided some helpfulness. Significance is value and impact combined into a singular statement that you share with someone. Maya Angelou told us that people will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And making somebody feel significant is one of the greatest gifts we can give to other humans. It's also highly connective. So if you want to become more connectable, remember to spotlight someone's significance. The third and final secret is to become more interruptible. In a famous study from the 1970s, researchers at Princeton University found that 90% of priests in training studying at Princeton's theology school stepped over someone in need on their way to deliver a sermon about the Good Samaritan. Which seems very interesting, right? What would prevent these priests in training from stopping to help someone on their way to deliver a sermon about the importance of stopping to help someone? The answer is busyness. The researchers told the students they were late to deliver the sermon. So as they raced across campus passing an actor who laid injured on the ground, the vast majority did not stop to help. The study revealed something very important about human behavior. It revealed that time constraints significantly limit our ability to connect with those around us. And I would argue we are more time crunched than we've ever been before. Finding time to invest in the people around us is hard. Which is why secret number 3, becoming more interruptible, is rooted in this notion that we prioritize the people around us over the tasks that plague our day. That we prove to our connections that we're investing time, energy, and effort into the relationship. One of the best ways to do this comes compliments of Dr. Jeffrey Hall. He's a professor at Kansas University. He recommends that we build a social regimen. A social regimen is a set of routine acts or behaviors dedicated to social connectedness that you follow on a regular basis. Just like how we make time for our physical fitness, we need to make time for our social fitness, because our social muscles need similar workouts in order to stay sharp and strong. A social regimen might come in the form of Tuesday morning coffees with a colleague, or a Wednesday afternoon phone call with a friend, or a Thursday evening game night with a significant other or a neighbor. What you do as a part of the social regimen doesn't matter much. What does matter is that you defend that time vigilantly, because connections do not build themselves. They require us to be better than our busyness. Never wavering off task is for robots. We need to be beautifully human to make time for the people around us. So if you want to become more connectable, remember to become more interruptible. During my disconnected days in Elko, I brushed aside my anxiety, I swept under the rug my unhappiness, and I hid away the loneliness I was experiencing in my life. If I would have known the 3 secrets to becoming more connectable, performing pro-social behaviors, spotlighting someone's significance, and becoming more interruptible, I might have been able to convert my little connection sparks into big flames of belonging. I might have been able to tap into the most powerful force on the planet, a force I saw in action on May 3rd, 2017. Following an emergency C-section, my daughter was rushed over to an exam table to help her breathe. She wasn't responding in the right way, and the decision was made to take her up to the NICU. As a first-time parent, I was really scared. I wasn't sure if my daughter was going to make it. And as I sat next to my wife, with a very heavy heart and a lot of fear in my eyes, our doctor walked over with my daughter, and he bent down, and he said, "Mom, you could have very quick skin-to-skin contact before I need to take this baby upstairs." So he gently placed my daughter on my wife's chest. My daughter looked up, saw my wife, and melted in her arms. This is that moment. And as soon as she hit my wife's chest, she took a huge breath in, and then another, and then another. She went from bluish purple to bright and pink. Her vitals stabilized. She avoided a trip to the NICU. My daughter needed to be next to the most important person in her life. She needed human connection. And as all of us enter into this world, the very first thing we need before food, shelter, or water is a caring connection. Someone who can deliver life's most necessary nutrients to us. And as we go through our whole childhood, we get these nutrients in abundance. People perform pro-social behaviors by giving us their undivided attention. They spotlight our significance by making us feel special. And they act with a sense of interruptibility, dropping whatever they're doing to tend to our immediate needs. But somewhere along the way, we forget that we still need these nutrients in order to thrive, in order to feel connected. So it's important that we become as connectable as we can, because we are nothing without our connections. Thank you.